Okay, I think it's 6:30. Just before we start the formal meeting, this is just a message to the committee only. We were going to have some training on the Scrap Metal Dealers Act of 2013 after this meeting, but as the subcommittee that was going to deal with one of these issues is now no longer going to happen, and as it's a very, very rare occurrence, we won't have that, but we will instead have some notes about the new legislation, and we will have some sort of rudimentary training when we have our next general training after the next election. Does that suit everybody? Everybody's happy about that? Okay. It's highly unlikely that another of these will come up anyway, so we don't want to spend hours learning about something we don't need. Okay, thank you. Let's start the meeting with the fire evacuation procedures. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exits are located at the rear and side of this room. Go down the stairs and meet in the War Memorial Park. Thank you. Next, to note that the open proceedings of the meeting are webcast. Next, to ask that all mobiles are either switched off or put on silent. Apologies of absence. Have we got any? No? So we'll just note that Councillor West isn't here. Any resignations and replacements? Not. So nobody's... Okay. Declarations of conflicts of interest? No. I have no urgent items. Next, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of November 2013, found at paper A on page 4 of 50. Can we confirm that they are accurate, please? Agreed? Thank you very much. I'll sign those at the end. Member and public participation upon issues contained within the agenda. We have requests from Mr. Ketteringham and Mr. Dainty to speak on paper C, Mr. Cullick and Mr. Dinning on paper B. If that's all, I will be asking you to come forward at the appropriate time, if that's okay. Thank you. I have no referrals from other committees, the Council or Cabinet, and nothing from the portfolio holder, so we'll get on with the main part of the meeting. Right, the main business. We have 2 items. The first of those is to do with advertising on private hire vehicles and hackney carriages. And we will take this in 2 parts as they're fairly distinct. The first one is advertising on private hire vehicles. And before we hear from a member of the trade, we'll ask the officer to introduce, please. Is that Linda? Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We've had a request from the trade, a member of the trade who's actually here tonight, who wishes to speak, to consider our policy on advertising on licensed private hire vehicles. Section 48 of the Act does allow us to have regard to what we want on our vehicles, what we want the vehicle to look like, and the suitability of the vehicle to be a private hire vehicle. Some authorities require specific makes and models and colours, some don't, some allow advertising, some are less strict. So it really is down to local level to have that policy. But I thought to assist members tonight, it'd be useful to go back a bit to the background, because a lot of the members here tonight weren't on the committee 10 years ago, 1 or 2 may have been. So I thought it'd be really useful for the newer members of the committee just to hear a bit of the background. In 2003, this committee resolved that all licensed private hire vehicles should be white, all white. Initially, it started off as white with a blue bonnet and a blue bumper or boot or something, but they eventually resolved to have all private hire vehicles to be white in colour. Around that time, there was lots of evidence of illegal applying for hire by private hire drivers at the then Liquid nightclub, and there was a considerable issue down there. Due to a lack of signage on vehicles, members of the public would see a car down there, approach it, are you free, have I booked you, yes, no, whatever, and they'd be taken on their merry way. There was nothing to identify the vehicle as a licensed vehicle other than a vehicle licence plate on the rear of the vehicle, which, when it's parked against the wall, is a bit difficult to see. Unless you approach the vehicle from the rear, you wouldn't have seen it. Some people would just get into a car, they didn't know if it was licensed or not. There was also incidents of unlicensed applying for hire in Festival Place, and at one time a young girl was picked up in a green car and later subjected to an assault. That driver was unlicensed, and so was his vehicle. Concern that public safety was not really being considered was raised, and and that public safety was in general being compromised because private hire vehicles were not easily distinguishable from normal privately owned vehicles. And obviously outside a nightclub, you'll get private hire vehicles picking up. Outside a pub, you'll get private vehicles picking people up. So it's very difficult to distinguish them between the two. And also then any journeys that were undertaken without being pre-booked could potentially invalidate insurance cover. So there was a concern. At that time, the licensing service for taxing private hire licensing was moved to the licensing team, which was newly created that year, ready for the new Licensing Act. We looked at that decision about all cars needing to be all white, and we had some concerns that across all the makes and models of vehicles, there's probably 50 different shades of white. So what is white? And also the fact there was concern, I think, amongst the trade that Skodas were becoming very popular, and if everything had to be white, this could delay delivery times and potentially put the price up because there was a captive market. We looked at more at the public safety side of things and felt that it wasn't really about the vehicle appearance, it was about the identifiable nature of the vehicle, so the public could instantly see the vehicle was licensed. So we looked at potentially different ways of making it easily identifiable and take the pressure off the trade to always have white cars. They're not very good in the winter either, obviously. And we looked at signage, and we felt that it was better to have clear, distinguishable signage that the public could easily identify that meant a vehicle was licensed and therefore safe. And we considered the impact on the trade while we did that. What we came up with was a new design of licence plate for the rear plate and a new front plate, and also door signs conveying that public safety message, pre-book only, or no booking, no ride in this case. And that policy went through in around 2004, 2005. So the incidence of allegations of applying for hire outside pubs and the nightclub almost disappeared, and it's been negligible ever since. People know what our licensed vehicles look like. There is nothing to distract them from it. And it gave us like a really good clear fleet appearance is the expression I like to use. You can look at a car, it forms part of a fleet irrespective of its make, model and colour. We felt that the request to allow advertising could compromise the safety because the vehicle message, the clear public safety message could be lost in advertising, depending on the nature and size of the adverts. And we felt that we'd worked long and hard, and this committee had also worked long and hard to finally achieve a vehicle status that reflected the safety of the vehicle and the public could see. And our concerns are that this could be lost if advertising on private hire vehicles is permitted. Tonight you just really need to decide if a relaxation on the advertising on private hire vehicles is appropriate, whether or not it would compromise the public safety message, and how a policy on what we would and would not allow could be effectively designed, implemented and enforced. As Councillor Mrs Taylor suggested, I think we look at the private hire advertising first, and go through the debate and the questions on that, and then move on to Hackney Carriage licensing advertising after that, if everybody's happy. Happy to take questions.
Okay, at this stage, anybody got any questions for the officer? No? In that case, can I ask, perhaps both speakers would like to come forward together. That's Mr Kalik and Mr Dinning. Thank you. And can you introduce yourself before you start? Thank you.
I'm Mark Denning. Good evening. My name's Steve Kalik. Okay, I've been assisting Steve on the advertising proposal for private hire vehicles. Allowing advertising on private hire vehicles gives a great opportunity to promote local businesses and generate extra income in a very tough market. Our original request was submitted in October last year. We had hoped the licensing team would have worked with us to complete the report or done a consultation for opinions through the newsletter, which has been done previously. The report suggests there may be a public safety issue with the advertising on vehicles, as it may no longer be identifiable, and there may also be a funding issue, as budgets were set late February 2014. Can I respond to those two things? Firstly, the current plates and no booking, no ride sticker requirements for private hire are much higher than many other boroughs locally, but accepted. Currently, Hackneys only have a rear plate to identify their Basingstoke licence from the outside. Many councils do allow private hires to display advertising and have not encountered safety issues and I'm sure they would have withdrawn the option if they had been. Our proposal suggests adverts should only be displayed on a limited part of the vehicle and not on the same panel as the no booking, no ride sticker, to ensure the vehicle is still identifiable as a private hire. Secondly, in the report it is unlikely the full 270 private hire vehicles would ask for advertising approval. Why don't you consider a charge per vehicle, as done by many other councils? This charge could also be introduced for Hackney vehicles when applying. To develop guidelines application form approval process shouldn't take more than 1 day's effort. The increased workload will be covered by the one-off vehicle charge. I'd therefore like to propose option 2 in 4.2 of the report and invite any questions.
Thank you very much. Does Mr. Kalik want to speak as well?
No, I'm happy with what Mark's had to say, and I've got nothing to add to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Dinning or Mr. Kalik? Yes, Councillor Raffel.
Could either of them perhaps explain to us what their view is on whether there should be a policy of restricting the advertising to borough-related businesses or borough-related activity? I'm not expressing a view myself on that. I'm just asking what their view is, please.
I wholly agree. I believe it should be local businesses that we partner up with.
Thank you very much. Any more questions? No? Thank you very oh yes, Councillor Regan.
In reference to option 2, that you prefer, is I'll hold this picture up here, the colour. Is that what you'll see as option 2?
No, we've got some other ones.
All right.
I mean, there's many ways of different advertising systems on cars. It can be singular, you can wrap the whole vehicle. We're only suggesting the tail end of the vehicle away from the no booking, no ride sticker, so that it's clearly identifiable. Got the colour ones there. Okay. Hopefully we're on the bottom of that pile.
Yeah.
See if you can grab it.
Councillor Frankham.
Just looking at this picture, on the second one down is on the rear quarter. A number of the private hires have actually got the no book, no ride sticker on that section. So how would that work with the conflict of that? I don't know if the officers want to comment on that.
Sorry, I would suggest that the guidelines are changed so that estate cars and minibuses, when having advertising, display it on the middle 2 quarters. Never share it on the same panel.
Thank you. Should we just ask if an officer has a comment?
The licence conditions currently require the door signs to be on the front door or the rear door. It's only minibuses that are permitted to have them in the extension, in the estate part. So if there are any in the wrong place, we probably need to know about it so that we can go and have a word.
I've seen a black private hire. Next time I see the plate number, I'll report it.
But either way, you're proposing it to be well away from any of the plates.
On a totally different panel.
Okay.
We don't want to
thank you.
compromise the no booking, no ride. We want to work with the council, and whatever they approve, that's what we'd go with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Jones.
Quickly, would you say it affects in the fares if you did have advertising? Would fares be cheaper because of the revenue coming in?
There may not be a reduction, but not like some others. We're not looking to increase. It'll subsidise, as I said, in a tough time, the current drivers that are out there. Generally, there's increases in licence and other matters. Not asking for you to reduce anything. Like obviously, we might be giving you more of a workload, and we're just trying to work with you and say, look, if there's a costing on that, then by all means we will pay that cost.
So you're saying that there might be some benefit to the travelling public in that you might not be raising fares quite so readily as you're getting more revenue from advertising.
That's correct, because it subsidises the running cost of our vehicles, so it helps everybody in the trade, i.e. that boils down to the customer at some point.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know whether you're in a position to give us any indication of what sort of revenue you expect from an investment that you carried on your car.
It's more about partnering. We've got a supplier of vehicles who does the servicing as well. He's suggesting some free servicing in trade for displaying his adverts. You may get more work from a hotel. So if we partnered with the Hilton or the Apollo, we display their advert, they may be biased to use us. So it's partnering, really.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Yes, Councillor Raphael.
Can I ask Mrs. Cannon this question? Is she able to tell us what neighbouring authorities do in relation to private hire vehicles, just so that give us some guidance, and sizes of adverts and that sort of thing, and any difficulties they may have encountered, or otherwise?
I've done a bit of a straw poll, and they vary from local authority to local authority. I did send out a message to all local authorities and got some responses. In general, it seems that where there is a specified vehicle, it's black, it's got to be this, it's got to be that, they relax the requirement for advertising because everyone can look at the vehicle and see it's a private hire vehicle because they're all the same. Where local authorities allow, any type of vehicle, they're more likely not to allow advertising because they need to not to detract from the vehicle, because it's a bit like our Hackney carriages. Our Hackney carriages here we restrict to 4 or 5 different vehicles, and with the yellow light on the top, the fact they're always at the rank, it's easy to identify as a Hackney carriage vehicle, and any advertising doesn't distract from that. Where you've got private hire vehicles of various makes, models, colours, sizes, it's only by its signage that it's identified as a licensed vehicle. And our concern, as I said earlier, was that would distract from that. In terms of issues with other local authorities, I'm not aware of any. I've just done a straw poll to look at where they allow advertising. Do they have a vehicle policy that restricts the type of vehicle? Where they don't allow advertising. So to see if there's a correlation, and there is a slight correlation between the fact that if they restrict the vehicle, they're more relaxed on advertising.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman. You said that there are benefits for you and there are benefits for the organisations that you would be advertising. If you, well, that's obviously that makes sense. And you said there may be benefits in terms of held down fares or no increases. May was the word I think you used. From our point of view, I mean, the main point is a benefit to the travelling public, not just in terms of safety and so on, but how would you predict that if we went down this road, how would that benefit the travelling public, other than purely yourselves and the organisations you're advertising?
We're not looking to increase. We run at considerably lower price than other organisations, particularly the Hackneys. It's a different game. There's a few tuts back there. It's a different game. You could ask the same question of them. Why would they want an advert on their vehicle? It's about partnering and sharing some costs.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I mean, I can understand absolutely the benefits for yourselves and the benefits for the company that you're advertising and promoting. I'm just trying to get a sense of where would the benefit be for the travelling public, because I can't see one, other than being made aware of, organisations in and around, whether it's restricted to Basingstoke or not. I can't see a benefit for the travelling public. Or maybe am I just interpreting this too narrowly?
No, we're not looking to increase. Obviously, in this tough time, the cost of, running costs, we've seen great increases in fuel and other things, but we don't increase the price because we've got to remain competitive. This just helps subsidise where we are today. As I said, it's not, this advertising isn't to sort of, as I said, it's purely to help us in this tough time to not, have to forward that cost on into the cost of fares for the general public as such.
And that's actually exactly my point. You would be hopefully avoiding passing on any increase of fare for whatever reason. I'm trying to get some kind of statement that says we would ensure that would be a consequence if we were to agree to something along these lines that benefited you and the people you were advertising.
I can't speak for all operators, I'll be honest. I'm in a fortunate position. Only 4 weeks ago, I took over one of the larger companies in the town. I have no intentions of increasing our prices. But as I said, I can't speak for the other three big firms. But as I said, that helps subsidise what what we're doing as a company and maintaining the vehicles, and that stops you from forwarding that cost on to the general public. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any more questions? Yes, Councillor Barnes.
Thank you. I was wondering, looking at this picture, there's would be an advert on one side. Would it be the same advert on the other side, or would it be a different one? Would you understand what I'm saying? Would it be the same advert on each side of the vehicle, or one on one side and one on the other side? Thank you.
Yeah, the content would be there. It'd be one advert by one company. It'd probably just be a small logo. We have a company in mind that have approached us, and that's how this come about. And it's very similar to the logo that a lot of Hackneys run with. So it would be one logo, one advertisement per vehicle.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Any more questions? No? Thank you, gentlemen. I'll just clarify with the officers. We've been talking about who pays for this. Obviously, the officers will have some increase of work. This won't be passed on in the licence fee. Is that correct? Because approval of advertisements and advertising policy is not part of the costs of issuing a licence, we wouldn't be able to recover the cost of that work through the licence fee, and neither are we able to recover any enforcement costs through the licensing fee. So there would be no income gained for the council to cover the costs of this particular issue, because the licence fees, what we can and can't charge for, are quite restricted. So there may be discretionary charging powers in other local authority legislation. We would need to research those, but in any event, any enforcement would not be recoverable through the licence fee, any costs. Thank you very much. Councillor Godison, we'll move into a discussion now, but obviously you can ask your questions as well.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask Melanie, if should we be mindful to allow sort of one advert per vehicle? Is it legally permissible for us to state that it has to be of a local business? I mean, would the law permit us to make that restriction?
Yes, the law would permit you to make that restriction, and I think a lot of authorities operate along the same lines as well.
Any points of discussion? What are people thinking? Councillor Regan?
I take note what the officer said about there'd be a cost to the council, basically, wouldn't there, if we go for advertising. So, I mean, I'm inclined to I think option 2 is quite reasonable. I think it doesn't detract from the actual the actual safety side of it. So I'd like to hear what other members think, actually, really. So I'm quite open-minded about that. I think option 2, to me, seems quite reasonable. I can't believe there'd be much cost in the long run, actually, either, because there's a cost to be policing it, wouldn't it? So There's an element of self-policing by the taxi companies as well.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
On the same sort of lines, I'm looking at option 2, thinking, you know, what size are we talking about? Are we, you know, things like that. If we're talking something small, a badge type thing, I can't see any harm in that. If we're talking major advertising down the side of a vehicle, you know, I can see problems with that. And I think we need, if I was perfectly honest, we need a bit more information than what we got. What would be permissible? And when we talk about local, are we talking about, would we got major international firms in this town, if they want to advertise? Is that local or what? You know, there's all things to fall over. I think we haven't got enough information, because on the way I see it, as if they're getting more revenue from advertising, that could push the price of fares down. And fares are could, but we just haven't, in my view, haven't got enough information to make that decision at the moment.
I'm not sure we're going to get any more information on that one. I'm not sure we're going to get any more information on that one. It's not something that we can find out about.
What I'm trying to make is that, let's say we went for option 2, we couldn't actually pass it today because we've got to decide on size, we've got to decide on maybe design even. And in principle, if it's small enough, I haven't got a problem with it personally, but as long as I don't think it's going to detract from the rest.
We could agree that in principle we would be open to option 2, but more detail would have to be brought to the table for us to approve the details. We could certainly do that. Councillor Dunlop, you wanted to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm in favour of option 2, but so far we've talked about advertising on the outside of the vehicle. Would this cover small adverts on the inside of the vehicle as well?
I mean, it could be considered as part of a policy. The difficulty with private hire vehicles, if your average saloon car, there's not really anywhere, and the trade might be able to put me right, there's not really anywhere to put an advertisement, whereas in a Hackney carriage vehicle, there's the glass panel, there's doors, there's solid sides, there's tip-up seats. I mean, it'd be very difficult to put an advert inside a private hire saloon, I think, but the trade may have further comments on that.
Any other speakers? Yes, Councillor Barnes.
Would there be a restriction regarding what colours they would use? I mean, could they use red or blue? Or is there any particular restriction on the colours that they'd have to use for their adverts? Thank you.
I think an advertisement is an advertisement, and we just have to accept. We can restrict the size, but I don't think we can design it for them. Councillor Frankham.
One of the concerns I would have with advertising is the location by a Basingstoke logo. Would it look like Basingstoke are then endorsing that advertiser? So I'm very worried about putting advertising on, one, detracting from the safety message we're trying to get with the signage, and two, will people see it as a stamp of endorsement from the borough of a company we might not necessarily want to endorse?
Any other speakers? What are we thinking? I mean, the choice, I think, is between option 1 and option 2, but if we do go for option 2, I think we would have to say in principle, but we'd have to go for more detail in a future meeting. Yes, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm still stuck, and I'm not sure that I can get unstuck with it, because I pressed the point as far as I could in terms of where would we see the benefit, principally to the travelling public. The impact in terms of managing it, enforcing it, or whatever on this authority. The issue about how would we restrict it to Basingstoke only? How would that actually happen in practice? I mean, I heard the view that you would look to advertise or go into partnerships with Basingstoke-based companies, but I'm not sure how we will be able to avoid it going beyond that. And would we then have a different view if if a taxi somehow started advertising, because we didn't say you couldn't advertise beyond Basingstoke and Deane. There's a preference for it. If we said yes, Basingstoke only, how would we enforce that, and what would the cost implications of that be? And I'm still stuck on great news for the taxi driver and the taxi company, great news for the company that's being promoted, but where is, and maybe it's a false kind of view that I have, that there should be in there some element of benefit to the travelling public, and which is why I was coming back to can we somehow hold down the fares, and that to me would be a benefit to the public as a result of the income generated from the advertising.
Yes, I mean, we don't have any influence on the fares. Yes, Councillor Godison.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think Councillor Jones is absolutely correct. We need a lot more information about what sort of size of advert, et cetera, but is it not possible for us to defer this until we have much more information on those sort of issues, but without necessarily saying that we approve of it in principle? I think it would be a mistake for us to say we approve of it in principle, but there's every reason to say we need more information about colour, size, exactly where it would go, and blah blah blah. Thank you.
Are you wanting to say more?
If it helps
Okay, well, just on this occasion, but in future, if you could ask first, thank you.
If you don't mind me speaking, if I can just clarify a few of them things. One of your questions was, what's the benefit to the customer? I could ask the same question, how that applies to the Hackney carriage. We'll move away from that. The advertising that we're looking at already has a partnership with the Hackney carriages, so it's already been approved for the Hackney carriage, so I wouldn't foresee that being a problem with the private hire. And as we're saying, we're not asking for a full wrap or half a wrap. Even if it was just the tailgate, we want to work with the council, and whatever you approve, we will work with. And as I said, I think it's beneficial for the council. I think everyone should make something. And if there was an approval fee, then that would get forwarded on to the vehicle owners, and if not the vehicle owners, they forward on to the company that wants to advertise on their vehicle. So therefore, I personally see it as a win-win for everybody.
Okay, thank you. I think we know your arguments. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Am I hearing that you would like to investigate it further, but we would like to have a much more definite proposal on the table before we either approve or not? Is that okay? I mean, we certainly don't want to stray in the area, or should it be local, or should it, because we're then straying into the area of the next thing that we're going to decide. So can we agree, therefore, that we are prepared to look at it at a future meeting, but we'd like a more definite proposal on the table in terms of size, positioning, and the nature of the advertising? Councillor Jones.
Good if we could either have pictures or actually tell us where certain cabs that have got advertising. We could go and have a look, even in our own time, if you see what I mean. Give us a better idea than just talking around on size. But if you go and see something on a vehicle, I think it gives you a better outlook, personally.
That's a good point. These pictures aren't very, very helpful because they don't really give us a visualisation of what they would look like. And I think Councillor Frankham's point about looking as if Basingstoke is endorsing something is quite important. So size and positioning is very, very important here. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask, if that's going to be our position from this evening, who's going to do that sort of modelling work, if I could call it that? Is it going to be something that the trade is required to present to the licensing team? Is it something that the licensing team and the trade could and should work on together? It's just a question. Yes, we need more information. Yes, we need some certainty about scale, size, and positioning and so on, but who's actually going to put that piece of work together for us to consider at the next meeting, on which we could hopefully make a decision? Because I wouldn't want to see this drawn out any longer than it needed to be.
I think
it would have to go onto the list of the projects for this year, and it wouldn't be at the top of the list because we have set out this year's projects. I think we would look to the trade to come up with some suggestions. They could do the background work and then present that to us. The difficulty is where you draw the line, as we've said this evening, on size, on what company you allow to advertise, on whether it's local, whether it's not, that sort of thing. And that would have to be a policy matter. So that would be for us to decide, but I think it would be useful for the trade to come up with the sort of thing that they think is the way they want to go with it, and then we take it from there. I think it's important that it's on their vehicles they do that background work, but it will go on the list of projects for this year, and I can't guarantee when it will come back, but it could be added to the list for later in the year. Is that okay?
Are we happy that we've come to some agreement, and we will ask the trade if they would, you've heard what we have to say and you've heard our concerns and the sort of advertising we would consider, if you could come up with some more definite proposals within those parameters, small positioning, etc., and come up with perhaps one or two ideas that we can actually work with that's more definite. And if the committee is happy, we will leave it at that for now. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Right, we'll now move on to part two of the first item, which is very different, advertising on Hackney carriages. And Linda, if you'd introduce that for us. Thank you.
Hackney carriages, sorry. As I just said earlier, with regard to Hackney carriages in this borough, we do restrict the types of vehicle that can be used as Hackney carriages. They've all got a big yellow light on the top, they all work from the ranks, so they're really easy to identify as a Hackney carriage. And advertising has been permitted on Hackney carriages since long before my time, and it's never come up as an issue. We do get occasional requests to approve adverts through the media and marketing companies, and I think in my time we've only ever refused one. I won't go into detail about why, but it was one that we didn't feel was appropriate. So we don't feel that advertising on Hackney carriages really detracts from the appearance of the vehicle. You can see it's a taxi by the big yellow sign on the top. And as I said earlier, many authorities allow advertising on Hackney carriages, some allow none. And many allow it only on the inside, perhaps on the flip-up seat or on the glass panel or whatever. So it really is a minefield. There's nothing clear and consistent across the country. The current advertising condition in the report is a bit vague. It's been there for years. It's never been a problem. But in November, December last year, we received an application to approve a full wrap for a Hackney carriage, which was advertised in the Oracle at Reading. The advert itself was inoffensive, was fine, and met all the sort of looks and everything, but we just didn't feel comfortable about it because we have Festival Place in the borough and we should be promoting our own town. But the current condition doesn't actually allow us to reject that, so we approved it, and I don't know if it's actually appeared on a vehicle yet. It has it? Oh, thank you. And I did speak to Festival Place after that, and they were very keen to advertise on private Hackney carriages. I don't know how it works. Just a question here, open question. Do the trade approach the companies, or do the companies approach the trade to say we want to advertise on your
contact us via email.
Okay, thank you. Well, Festival Place are very keen to advertise on Hackney carriage vehicles, for your information. As I said earlier, having looked at some other policies, it seems that where there's a really easily identifiable vehicle, there's a much more relaxed approach to advertising. Where the vehicle is less likely to be easily identifiable, there's a much more strict approach to advertising. However, any advertising has to comply with the UK Code of Non-Broadcast Advertising, Sales Promotion and Direct Marketing. It's not actually a recommendation in this report, but we're going to suggest that if you do agree to amend the licence condition for any advertising, that we include a condition that says that they must comply with that code, because that code relates to things like decency and children and privacy and all those things that you have to be careful about, not having misleading adverts and that. So the first view was that perhaps we should be looking at having a condition that restricts advertising to local businesses. I haven't consulted on the trade on this. And also that later I've just said we should add the condition to ensure that there's compliance with that code. I have got it. It's 120 pages, so I haven't circulated it. And it just to help promote the borough. We're a town, we're spending money on this town, we're investing lots of money in the town, and it would be useful to be able to promote that subject to the issues that we've raised in the earlier part of this discussion. So I hope that helps. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions at this stage to Linda? I haven't got anybody registered to speak, but if anybody from the Hackney Carriage Trade would like to say anything on this subject, you're welcome to come forward. No? Yes? And introduce yourself first. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Madam Chair, my name is Richard Ketchum and I'm the chairman of the Federation. I have no problem with the way the advertising is at the moment, and like I say before, there's one driver that has been speaking to a certain agency for a number of years, and another agency has spoken to me personally last year. So, and also with the advertising that does go on the Hackneys, like Linda said, there's no reason to not realise that it's actually a Hackney carriage vehicle. Because of the type of vehicle, especially with the TX, you can tell instantly it's a Hackney carriage vehicle, and there's not going to be any confusion with the type of vehicle.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Ketteringham? No, thank you. Open for discussion? Yes, Councillor Regan.
The big question is what's relevant to our local borough. I can see obviously the clear one is the Oracle as opposed to the Festival Place. But what about national companies, BT, British Gas and stuff like that? You know, would you allow that? And I think that obviously our side, I hope the other side, we wouldn't want people like Wonga advertised, or gambling companies, Ladbrokes or something like that. I would be opposed to that, but certainly it's a bit of a minefield, I think, trying to determine what relevant is.
To be honest, I would assume that by the time you get into one of our Hackney carriages, you know the benefits of Festival Place, so maybe they ought to be touting for business in Reading. Okay, so we either want to reword the condition to enable just local advertising, which benefits the borough, which, as Councillor Regan has pointed out, could be very tricky to police and identify, or we maintain the status quo but perhaps add in compliance with the code that Linda was talking about. Councillor Raphael.
I would urge the committee to take the second approach, to add in the compliance with the code and not restrict it, because it seems to me the ultimate test is public safety, and I cannot see how public safety can be compromised by advertising something that comes from outside the borough. And I also think that, as Councillor Regan has said, it's almost impossible to define. So, for instance, we may have a major employer in Newbury dealing with mobile phones, which are used by many, many people within our borough, and maybe a great source of sponsorship, maybe something that people who work within our borough live in our borough but work there, and it'd be completely wrong, I think, in a free society to say, well, you can't advertise that. So I think it's impossible to define, and it's not there for public safety, and if the Hackney Carriage Federation had enough money, they'd probably get around to judicially reviewing, if a judicial review survives, the decision, because it's just unreasonable. And so I would say stick to the second suggestion.
I mean, there speaks a lawyer. Are we generally thinking that, at least for the time being, we'll stick to the status quo? You can advertise within reason what you want, but we would like to add in compliance with the code. Are we all agreed on that? Yes?
Yeah. I am. I'll take the point, but the point Councillor Regan brought up, if I see a lot of advertising for betting shops and God knows what else, I think it ought to come back to this committee at some stage to review it, because we don't want that. We don't want these cheap loans where they cost people thousands of pounds either. Just cheap looking loans, to put it that way. But other than that, I'm quite...
Thank you. Yes, point taken. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, and that point that Councillor Jones has made is a good one. I mean, that the issue of payday loans and so on has already come to one of our committees, and we've already made a very strong statement about what should or shouldn't be encouraged. And I think in terms of consistency, we have to be saying the same thing through this route as well as the other parts of this authority.
A suggestion, yes?
My suggestion would be that while we're doing the work for the private hire advertising policy, we look at all those issues such as gambling, indecency, all those issues, and actually specify in a policy what we will and won't allow. And it will apply to both types of vehicle then.
Is everyone happy with that? In the meantime, we rely on the reasonableness and compliance of our Hackney carriage drivers. Who are wonderful. Who are wonderful, I'm told. Okay, thank you very much. That's agreed. Right, let's move on to the final paper. To consider a trade request to look at the effects of delimiting Hackney carriage vehicle numbers in Basingstoke. Linda.
Thank you. Members will recall that up until 2010, this council had a policy of maintaining a limit on or restriction on the number of Hackney carriage vehicle licences it would grant. We could only do this by demonstrating that there was no unmet demand, and that this could only be evidenced by the undertaking of an unmet demand survey every 3 years. Where a council has a policy of restricting numbers of Hackney carriage vehicle licences, there is a risk of a legal challenge should an application for a vehicle licence be refused for reasons of numbers only. In November 2010, this committee considered a report that set out grounds to stop restricting the number of licences and effectively allow a free market. That report set out the legal situation, the Department for Transport best practice guidance and previous court decisions. All the relevant considerations put before the November 2010 committee have been included in this report at Appendix 2. Officers believe that the only significant impact on the trade has been the long period of recession, which is likely to have impacted on the travelling public's ability to afford to use taxi services. The recession appears to be ending, and as stated in the report, the town will be subject to investment at the top of town, the new John Lewis Waitrose store, and the Network Rail Training Centre, as well as other investment in Basingstoke in general. These are likely to increase demand on taxi services, and consideration of rank provision will be included in those plans. It is hoped that this investment will encourage drivers to make use of all the ranks, not just the station. The Hackney Carriage Federation, which represents some of the Hackney carriage trade, has voiced their disappointment at that decision in November 2010, and I've asked this committee to consider their views on the impact of the decision to delimit in 2010. The views of the Federation have been attached to Appendix 1. Prior to this committee, we sent out a short questionnaire to all holders of Hackney carriage vehicle and driver licences to gauge their views. 91 letters were sent, but only half responded, amounting to 46 responses before the report deadline. A further 3 were received too late, and those were not included in this report. And I've summarised those responses at paragraph 3.11 of the report. Appendix 3 details the individual responses and licensees' comments. Where it was felt appropriate, we've added our comments to those in red. The number of licensed Hackney carriages has risen since 2010 from 55 to 69. A summary of that spread of licences since 2010 is included at Appendix 6. Members will note that several existing licensees have taken advantage of the removal of the limit and invested in additional vehicles, and at least 4 drivers who previously rented have invested in their own vehicles. We are still awaiting the outcome of the Law Commission's review of taxi and private hire law. This is unlikely to appear this year as promised. This may lead to changes in the local authority licensing regime across the country. A report will be brought to this committee when the outcome is announced. Whilst the trade have not asked this committee to reinstate a limit on Hackney carriage numbers, officers have considered their points raised and obtained further information to assist members in considering the trade's letter. Much of that is already included in the report. In terms of options open to this committee, I've detailed these at section 4 of the report, and we believe that option 1 is appropriate at this moment in time, having regard to the improving economic situation, the investment in the town, and the evidence that there is still a desire for some licensees to invest in new or their own vehicles rather than renting. Officers' views of the risks attached to those options are detailed at paragraph 5.2.1, and I'm happy to take further questions. I do have to say my right-hand man, Andrew Wake, isn't with me tonight. Unfortunately, he's off sick, and this is his subject area, so I will endeavour to answer questions as best I can, but I may have to come back with some answers if I'm not unable to. Thank you.
We've got lots of difficult questions. Any questions on this subject? Councillor Frankham.
Melody Trade sent an email out to all members. I just wondered if you wanted to comment. I know it's fairly similar to what he put in the appendix. I didn't know if you wanted to comment because there's some alarming information on there. I would be worried that we're not doing enough enforcement, although I know it's gone up significantly, or if our standards are too low.
If it's different to what's attached as the appendix to the report, then I haven't seen it recently, then I'm not sure if I've seen it at all, but if I've only included what was sent to me. I would just add that was attached to one of the responses. I have seen it.
Yeah, no, the site wording.
Okay, right, thank you.
But I just wanted to comment.
I have commented in the appendix of the report, but in terms, are you happy for me just to look at this and comment on it? Vehicles are older. We have done a bit of a survey on the age of vehicles, and the age of the Hackney carriages has gone up by about 1.8 years off the top of my head since 2010, or 18 months, I think. But out of interest, I also did a survey on the London taxi trade, and there are 22,726 licensed Hackney carriages in London, and they range from less than a year old right up to 24 years old. They've got, the average is 8.36 years of age. But they have them up to, they've got 1,600 vehicles that are 16 years old. So they've got a huge range of vehicle ages, and they have that strict specification. So while ours have gone up slightly, they're still a lot younger than the London vehicles, which I think would probably do a lot more miles, but the trade may correct me on that. I can't comment on drivers' ability to maintain the vehicles. Yes, there has been a reduction in the nighttime economy, but that again is improving. We are getting new applications for licences in the nighttime economy. In terms of drivers falling asleep at the wheel, they still have a general duty to drive safely and not to work until they're too tired and put their customers at risk. So I don't really want to comment too much on that. I think most of the other points are covered in the appendix to the report. So thank you.
Thank you for raising that. Are there any more questions at this stage? We can ask them later. I've just got a couple, if that's all right. You've obviously read the trade report at Appendix 1, at which it quotes quite extensively from the Law Commission's report in April last year. Would you agree with this? Would you agree that this is accurate and not misleading? I don't know if this is one that you can answer, if it would be one for Andrew, but yes, well, they quote extensively from it.
The only comment I can make on the Law Commission report is that it is still a moving target. There may be some deregulation coming out in the deregulation bill that's going through Parliament at the moment in relation to duration of driver's licences, but the outcome of this Law Commission work is a long way off, and it could change things quite dramatically, so I couldn't begin to comment until it's gone through Parliament.
So this leads me to my next question. I think you might have said it already and I wasn't listening, but is the forthcoming draft bill likely to include the subject of delimiting or limiting?
The deregulation bill going through Parliament at the moment does not refer to the delimiting of numbers. It literally refers to duration of licences, that's all.
Isn't there a forthcoming draft bill coming up that we're expecting to hear about soon?
That's what we probably won't hear till the next Parliament, because they're running out of parliamentary time.
The other thing, I don't think it's probably fair to ask you this with Andrew not here, but you give case law in the 2010 report, and it was resubmitted in this report, and I just wondered if you know if there's any more recent case law that would help in our decision.
I'm not aware of any. I don't know if Mel would be able to search. So, and I don't think there has been, no.
Councillor Regan.
Just a point of clarification regarding the Law Commission, because you put that in option 1. What you're saying, more not likely to report until after the general election, is that what you're saying?
Councillor Godison.
Thank you, Chair. So, sorry, can I just ask Linda, so what she's saying is that 3.17, when it says a report and draft note is expected at the end of April 2014, no longer applies.
Yes, that has been delayed.
Okay, thank you. Can I invite Mr. Ketteringham and Mr. Dainty to come to the table? And you can each speak. Is it just you? Just Mr. Ketteringham? Oh yes, okay. Then you can both field questions together.
Sorry, I wasn't going to last, so I apologise.
Thank you.
Right, good evening again. Shall I start?
Yeah, carry on, yeah.
Right, first of all, I'd like to congratulate the council officers for presenting a very good detailed report here for us this evening. It covers a great many areas as regards to their final recommendation in respect to a request made by us, returning to limiting the number of Hackney vehicles in Basingstoke. Putting myself in your shoes, I would probably be quite nervous at the very notion of relimiting, and would without question accept the recommendations from the council officers. However, there are some anomalies throughout this report, all of which we don't have time to cover. On behalf of the Federation, I would like to apologise to our drivers in the Hackney trade for building their hopes up in the use of a questionnaire sent out by the council. The council officers must have known or second guessed as to the reaction from the trade regarding the return to limiting the numbers of Hackney carriage vehicles. This appears to have been some kind of wasted ruse, along with the wasted public funds, in a pointless exercise that has resulted in quite a disregard to our own views. Under the heading on the proposal 3.6, paragraph 3.6, I would like to consider that Hackney trade was delimited on the grounds of an unmet demand survey prior to your decision in 2010. Should you look at the number of vehicles in comparison to the actual Hackney vehicles, it's quite obvious that other vehicles are being surveyed during the survey, which weren't Hackney carriage vehicles, and there's possibility of a confusion between Hackney carriage vehicles and of private hire vehicles, because of the obvious reason that private hire vehicles picked up and dropped off near to or next to current Hackney carriage ranks, especially down in Church Street and Festival Place, where it's quite busy down there with both types of vehicles. On paragraph 3.7, it talks about refusal of a licence, wishing to set up a business, and talking about the legal action that the council would possibly face in consideration of being told not to be able to release to create a Hackney vehicle licence. Now, this does not constitute the legal right or consider the legal implications of the individual group may have. A council decision on the rights of people's livelihoods should not constitute the fear by that council of legal action. The next part is on paragraph 3.13, the railway station rank and other ranks within the borough. Since the opening of Festival Place, the town has effectively closed off all access for Hackney vehicles, excluding the bus station area taxi rank. For some years now, the Hackney Federation have requested from this council the real need for proper legitimate signage for the general public to recognise the festival rank is not wholly run by A1 taxis. Drivers complain of long waiting times there, only to watch a customer walk by, go into A1's office, and then an A1 taxi or an A1 private hire vehicle then turns up to pick up the customer. Is it no wonder that particular rank is not serviced as it should be, because it's pointless going down there if you sit down there for an hour and then they call somebody else to pick up the customer that's gone into their office. The hospital rank spaces are often taken up by private hire vehicles or other vehicles contracted to the hospital work. It's a rarity to find a customer on the Tesco rank at the Chinham shopping centre, with the top of time being as well as the top of town behind McDonald's in Caston's Yard. There is no other working rank than that at the railway station. What other town denies its Hackney services a right to access within its town area? The rank where Wonderland used to be is now of no use. It is now closed. The only nightlife is centred towards the top of town and also in Festival Place, where a part-time rank outside the Willis Museum in London Street or Winchester Street would be an ideal spot. This has been denied to the Hackney trade, although we brought it up in a previous meeting. The two-car rank in Joyce's Yard sits far too close to an existing private hire company, and very little work comes from this. We know all about bylaws, and obviously it's saying about the driver must move on if the rank is full, but when you're at the point of having to feed your family or pay the bills, you're physically not going to wait at a rank for 3 hours with the possibility of not getting a job at all. And obviously when drivers have got families to feed, they're going to prioritise actually getting some money in to feed their families. Another reason is the general public are, again, unaware of the rank by Marks and Spencer's. It needs proper and clear signage. It also needs to be on the other side of the road. Every bus stop within the town area should have a clear sign that people can actually hail a cab from there. Drivers will stop using ring roads to get back to town and will use the bus routes. Then if the people that are waiting at the buses know they can hail a taxi from there, then they could save them a lot of time and waiting out in bad weather and that. Whatever your decision tonight, the Federation asks that you look into these rank problems, follow up on signage and look into the use of bus stops as taxi stops. With the probability of continuing increases of Hackney vehicles, there will without doubt be continuous problems. We talk about the European Union and the free market. A free market interpretation is that of shops and businesses being set up and competing with one another on pricing. This cannot work in Hackney carriage vehicles because every Hackney carriage vehicle is set at a certain price. So the term free market really doesn't apply because we all have to charge the same amount. So the interpretation of that just doesn't really come into understanding with the Hackney carriage trade. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Ketteringham, or do you want to hear Mr. Dainty first? Okay, Councillor Jones.
Well, you're bringing up about ranks. Last time I sat on this committee was about 4 or 5 years ago, and we were going through that scenario then. Has it not improved since then, or did we not give the rank? Because there was a lot of consultation going on at that time, if I recall, and it weren't just a one-way street from there. This is where we want a taxi rank. It was from your side. Has nothing happened, or are they in the wrong place now, or what?
Obviously, I can't comment personally on what was going on because I wasn't in with the Federation back a few years ago. But I think the principal problem is the lack of advertising of the ranks. And when it comes to positioning the ranks, like I read in the report that Linda did, talking about a rank outside the new John Lewis and Waitrose that is due to be built, I didn't even know about that until I read the report. There seems to be whether it's confusion or lack of communication, that these plans are made, but there's no actually somebody saying the licensing coming to us and saying, we'd like to put 2 more ranks around the town, where would you like it? There doesn't seem to be consultation with us about the ranks that go on, and most of the problem is down to signage. People just don't know where the ranks are.
Just before we move on, I'll give Linda an opportunity to just talk about signage. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for information, Hampshire County Council are currently investing in lots of new signage, and we have, as recently as last month, sent them details of every rank in the borough, and these will be included in these glamorous sort of illuminated signs with directions to all of the ranks in the town. So that will finally happen. We have been banging on about it for years, but it is finally going to happen.
Right, you're going to be illuminated.
Sorry, can I just make a quick point on the rank that you were just asking about? Because
if it's an answer to a question,
it is.
Yes.
The council, because you're right, we did have a lot of discussions, but subsequently since then the hub has moved. the town itself has altered, in as much as the railway station is the premier hub. There is no, it basically, even your own park and ride bus comes in to the station, doesn't go into the bus station, it does its loop and it comes back round again. The railway have invested huge amounts of money at the front. It's the premier point now. So everybody goes through, everybody comes out. So yeah, to an extent, these other ranks are probably becoming more and more obsolete. And of course, we have the perennial problem, which I know Councillor Burgess brought up many, many times, that we don't have a walk through town. We don't have that situation. And slightly with regards to ranks, we don't have 7, we have 5, because Chinham wasn't in the last survey in 2010, so it wasn't there. And the one at the railway station is basically a pick-up drop-off point, because predominantly what happens is that when they're stretched at the hospital with people visiting or people going in for appointments, they allocate those spaces to the general public. So there has been some movement and some quite transitional, as you would expect in the town as it grows and moves. So, you know, there's just a couple of points with regard to the conversation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Frankham.
Yeah, I did go around with the county councillor for the town area, county officers and Andrew Wake, to have a look at the ranks. And Church Street's not been painted yet, because I was led to believe it was going to be done in. Okay, I'll chase that out. Churchill Way rank, there is a sign, but it's on the church's brick walls, so if someone's sat on the wall you can't see it, and things like that. So those issues are aware. I don't know how far Andrew's got on the county officer has, because I haven't chased it up yet, but there is work being done on that. Doing anything to Festival Place rank, I was on a panel a few years ago to do with public transport and buses, to try and get anything done on there, because it's owned by Festival Place. Good luck. We couldn't get them to shift on anything. They didn't even want to engage with us. Hopefully it's changed by now, but I wouldn't hold your breath. Other than that, I just know, because the difficulty I had then before, hopefully we've got a better working relationship, we can do that. But that's a separate issue. I will chase up where those officers are on the rank issues. So I just wanted to say that, and Andrew probably know more, unfortunately not here.
Thank you very much. A question from Linda.
Hi, this is just for Richard and Peter. Were you aware of the Top of Town consultation document that was out recently, where they're looking at regenerating the whole of the top of the town? Did the trade respond to that at all? Because that would have been a really good opportunity to talk about ranks. And there is a Top of Town forum, is it? So it may be that it'd be useful for you guys to engage with that as well, because when they revamp the top of the town, ranks and everything's going to have to be considered, and your input would be crucial to that.
Yeah, I seem to recall, bless him, when Terry Cooper was alive, that he had some input into something along those lines, and there were some movement. At the end of the day, I think the ranks are important, but the other points that we cover within the document that's been appended to this report, it's been very well researched, it's been looked at, and it brings in what we view is a common and the current thinking along these lines. I accept a slight point of reservation with the Law Commission, in as much as that my issue with the Law Commission is...
Sorry to cut you off. If I could just ask you to speak on that in 1 minute, as we're dealing with questions, Mr. Kettering, I'll just have one final one from Councillor Frankham, if that's all right, presumably on the subject of ranks and signage.
I am aware other council members have been bringing issues to do with ranks and the bigger picture of public transport and getting people away for the dispersal at the top of town. So the subject has been raised, so please do put your input into it, because it's really important we get the ranks in the right places, and as there's going to be quite a bit of development there, we really do need it. Sorry, it's not really a question, but I thought it was important to say it has been raised.
Thank you very much. Yes, if we can hear from you now, Mr. Dainty, and you can get back to the subject in hand. Thank you.
Yeah, so going with back with the Law Commission, the reason that we've placed it within our current thinking is because of its dynamic change. It originally decided that it was going to go along with the idea that it felt that council should lose the right to decide on whether or not they limited or didn't limit. Now that's really not an issue in so much for us, because that's a power that you people have, and it's a kind of a power I think that you maybe need to hold on to, because if there are any issues at any stage, you won't be able to change them because you won't have the power. With the Law Commission, what they're saying is that the free market on that side of it really doesn't work. And this idea of a free market is not a free market. You know, we don't have a free market. It's an illusion to say that we do. It might be a political definition, but it certainly isn't a workable definition, because the council still seek to regulate everything that we do beyond. So what they're kind of doing is taking away the parts that suit, if you like, that make it more difficult for them to function. I can understand along the lines of the but then again, the guys behind me have probably got a similar merit argument, you know, in as much as they have issues with finance. So does the council. What we need to go back is probably where Councillor Taylor here made a point earlier on when he was talking to the private hire gentleman, where he said about benefiting the travelling public. Does what we've done in Basingstoke, or has it, benefited the travelling public? Now, looking at not what we're saying, but professional people, or other professional people are saying, in as much as the 203 report and the Law Commission, they're all saying that waiting times aren't improved. They're saying that if you looking at it, that fares go up, which they have, and vehicle age is an effect. So all in all of the ideas that were in the report don't seem to come to fruition. So what we're saying is, can we look at this? Have they benefited the general public? If they haven't, we need to revisit it, because surely that's the premise of what we're looking at. Not whether or not the council has more money to find and spend, or whether you take into account what our guys are saying about their livelihoods. You know, at the end of the day, if this is where we're going, then at the moment it doesn't look like the travelling public are benefiting, unless somebody here can tell me any different. If anybody here has done a survey or has looked or checked.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Dainty? Yes, Councillor Mrs. Reid.
Thank you. Absolutely hear what you're saying. I just wonder whether there's any possibility that the problems and the difficulties that you're describing since the deregulation are in some way affected by the recession rather than necessarily by the deregulation of the taxis.
I think you could argue to a point that there might be something in that argument that people do tend to sort of restrict their spending, I guess. But if we look back over the various reports that have come to this committee in my time since 2003, the numbers of actual footfalls or people using taxis were beginning to diminish back along probably in 2006. So you cannot discount the fact that it has a part to play, but the problem is then, if you're then looking at it from that point of view and people's incomes diminish, then that will impact upon the service that they can provide. Now, I go back to the Law Commission because it's the most recent one. When they did their survey, they spoke to licensing officers, they spoke to people in the trade, they spoke to everybody, and they turned around their opinion. So, you know, if somebody like that is looking at it, then I wonder whether this council should be revisiting it and having a look to see actually what this policy has achieved for the travelling public of Basingstoke, which is what we're all set up here to look at from our point of view and from your point of view. You know, because the other worrying factor is that there has been, in the latest newsletter, there was reference to drivers working more hours than they should be. They've actually been investigated, or were investigated, by the licensing team. Now, my assumption is that must have come from some sort of report from the general public or from somewhere. Within the Hackney Carriage side, the law says we have to take within the borough. So to apply our restrictions on us would be very difficult, because that would probably lead to be changed by law. So if we were sitting there 8 hours into our shift and somebody come and said, I want to go to point A in the borough, then by law we would have to take that person within the borough. So we would go beyond. So it would make life extraordinarily difficult. You know, it is a conundrum. It is a conundrum that I think fairly needs revisiting. But you know, you might say I would say that.
Thank you. Councillor Regan.
Yes, and I think, is it not, I'm going to put a question, so is your decline in trade not down to taxi fares being too high?
I could have bet my mortgage if I had one on that. No, I don't believe it is. In fact, actually, I think that if you look, when we started this, we were always in around about 120, 168 in the country. We moved to 103 in 2010, and since then we've moved to 15. We've just dropped to 17. Now, if you look at the research and you look it back through and go back as far as 2003, you'll see that there's always been a coalition with the two. You know, generally fares go up when limits are removed. And with the limits are to an extent help everybody because they enable people to reinvest and give the travelling public the very best, you know, in the sense. Now, you know, that's a good thing. But no, I in answer to your question, no.
Any more questions? I just got one about free trade and taxi fares.
Trade or market?
Market. Somebody I know had to spend £18.50 getting from Basingstoke railway station to Oakley in a hackney carriage, presumably after 11 p.m. And he just said to me, I'm just not going to get one again. It's too much. Just as a matter of interest, as I don't often use taxis, if he had gone to the next driver in the rank and said, can you undercut the offer, please? And to the next one and got the best deal. Is that acceptable practice? Does that ever happen, that taxi drivers undercut each other?
No, it couldn't with that, because obviously it depends where he's going, but if it's inside the borough, obviously you couldn't undercut anywhere. We could charge less, but it wouldn't happen. The only odd time it happens is if somebody's going, say, to Woking or Walsall-on-Thames, and a driver at the front says, say, £130, and maybe a driver behind will do it for £110, but that's really quite rare.
Can I just on your point there, the chances are probably that if he asked the front car, in fact, there was a perfect case of that a couple of days ago at the rank. Guy wanted to go to Alton, and he was trying to negotiate, and he ended up going with the front car at the original fare. So the chances are, in the climate that we're in at the moment, I doubt very much whether a driver would undercut. I'm not saying that nobody would ever not, but the chances would probably be quite remote. Yeah.
Any more questions? No? Thank you very much, gentlemen. Open for discussion. Delimiting we're looking at now, or limiting. Limiting. We're required to look at the, I can't remember the exact wording now. Yeah, we're required to consider the impacts of the 2010 decision to remove restriction. Yes, just to be specific, I've been reminded we are required to consider the trade's view of the impact, obviously, which we've heard in detail and we've got in our report. So comments or questions or ideas? Thank you, Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Chair. As a regular, I am a regular taxi user. Some of them gentlemen down there know. It's just a quick word on the taxi ranks. Yeah, the other ranks are not advertised and not used. I mean, there is a real problem there. So if you want a taxi, a black cab, you go to the railway station. There's no ifs or buts. If you're up the top of town, you still walk down to the railway station and get a taxi. That's reality. Going back to the issue in discussion, what's the benefit to the customer if we go back to restricted number? There isn't any. There is no. The point you made about the free market is a bit of a misnomer, really. If we lifted the restrictions as we did in 2010 and have unlimited licensing, it's not been opened up to the market either. There's been no downward pressure on prices as you would get if you, especially during a recession pricing. So it's a bit of you're restricting it, but you've not got a market. But I'm trying, there's some socialist struggles a bit with markets, a bit, but I can see a logic. If we extended the unlicensed and then let taxi drivers charge what they want, then it probably would, at the moment, be a downward pressure on prices, and in a boom times, it'd probably be upward prices. But if we went, I can't still see no advantage to the customer if we go back to restricted license. I think they only benefit the taxi drivers as such. So I would like to still see our status quo maintained.
Thank you very much. Councillor O'Fell and then Councillor Jones.
Well, I agree with Councillor Regan. Can I take up the no, not at all. When you talk sense, I'll agree with you. The fact is, first point that Councillor Regan made about ranks is absolutely right, and we have to urge the Federation to engage with the proposals for the top of the town. One of the things I've said at this committee before in their presence to them is that if they think that they would benefit from having access to London Road at night time, along with private hire vehicles, to pick up people as they spill out of restaurants and pubs and take them on their merry way, then they really need to engage with this process and say so. Because my view has always been that that would be one way of dealing with antisocial behaviour, the best way, and only need to look at the local paper to see another poor person has been beaten up round the corner from somewhere not just off London Road, because of no doubt people just milling around and not knowing how to get home. And you get the trade, and we get a better nightlife in the town. So I've said that. The second thing, which they I hope they know, but if they don't, I'll tell them through you, Madam Chairman, is this: that one of the proposals is to have two-way traffic on New Road, which of course must assist you no end, because you can go back and forward and start looking for trade, rather than getting constantly stuck on some great big merry-go-round like the rest of us at the moment, and by the time you've got round, of course, someone else has picked the person up. So that's got to be a benefit, and I certainly think we ought to be looking at whether there's a review of the ranks can be done, because from the trade's point of view, there's got to be something where they can move from one rank to another, either if there's nobody queuing because at the time of the day or the location it's not appropriate for there to be business there, they can move on to the next one, or if it's busy then they can just keep moving round, so that as it were they're not, as it were, stuck between, if they move too far away from the station, they're in a sort of no man's land of no trade at all. And we are, as a borough, across the parties, trying to promote the top of the town as a place where it's a good place to be during the daytime and at night time. It's a long, steady process. It's been a long journey. It's been many councillors, different political persuasions have been trying to do this for many years. But something is now on the drawing board and it's being progressed. So I'd urge them to engage with that. Can I say I agree with Councillor Regan's second point, which is that I cannot see that anything has happened that has been adverse to the public as a result of deregulation. We shouldn't get too hung up about what is a free market, because as we all know as politicians, no markets are completely free, unless if we were going to have a completely free market we wouldn't have any of the regulation and any of the badges on your things, and anyone could turn up with their horse and cart and collect anybody. So the fact is many areas of life are regulated, especially those that have conduct with the public. The Hackney carriage is in a slightly different position, as we know, because of the fact that their fares are restricted. If we had completely deregulated fares and you were to compete on a straight basis with the private hire vehicles, I suspect you'll be coming back to us even sooner to complain. So that's the quid pro quo. And you know that and we know that we have to strike the right balance. I'm not convinced that there are grounds for reimposing a limit. I'm not aware of any odd behaviour. For instance, what I mean by that is a whole company coming in and saying, right, we're going to take over Basingstoke by charging everyone lesser fares and putting you all out of business. That hasn't happened. What it is are people moving, some from private hire vehicles into Hackney carriages, and one or two of them expanding with a number of people who work together. And from my own perspective, always thought we'd be here. I always thought you'd come back. I always thought you'd say, look, there are more people out there now as hackney carriages, and to be quite fair and for good reasons you've explained to us, we don't like it. Well, I'm afraid that was all within the contemplation that I had when we made the decision, that I'm afraid it would cause your business to change slightly. And I'm afraid that's the nature of delimitation. It was never going to be, nothing would happen. I mean, you knew that when we did it, and we know it when we made the decision. So I think it's something we need to keep an eye on. But I also take the point that if there is going to be a change in the whole regulatory regime coming along in the next 12 to 18 months or even beyond, and it certainly seems there's a drive by the politicians to deal with the ancient legislation and to try and work out what the correct relationship is between private hire vehicles and hackney carriages once and for all. Until such time as we come to that point, will we be able to possibly determine whether or not there should be any limits at all. And as you know, I'm sure they know, that the market will change because of the area boundaries are very likely to go for private hire vehicles, which means that the whole market that is very restricted at the moment within Basingstoke and Deane is likely to be opened up to much wider competition, which will mean you'll be coming back to us even sooner, I should think, with requesting all sorts of things that we might have the power to do. So I know that's not the sort of good news you want to hear. It's probably bad news. But at the moment, dealing with public safety, I don't feel there are grounds to justify reintroducing a limit. But I've listened to everything you've said, and I understand where you're coming from.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, I won't go over what's been said because I do go along with those lines, but the one thing that's come out, and if you talk to hackney carriage drivers, as you do from time to time, they're not making a great sum of money these days. They're under pressure. I think this committee should be looking at some of the costings they're receiving and try and keep the costs down as much as possible. And when we come to licenses and things like this is something we can change to make life easier for them, because we all know by driving cars how much more expensive it's got. I think we've got to be seen to be doing our bit from the council's point of view to keep the costs down for the hackney carriage drivers.
Any other comments? No? Yes, Councillor Frankham.
I'm just going to say again to Councillor Raphael that I met with a member from the trade back in the end of last year and county council for the area, because it's highway, so it comes under county, and there's a list of issues, and I know Andrew and the county officers are working on it. I have been a little slack in chasing it up. So yes, there is already work done on the ranks, and Andrew Wake, he knows the subject very well. He was very aware of the issues, and they are trying to address as many of them as possible.
Has everyone said everything they feel they want to say on this subject? Yes, Councillor Jones.
We'll have to make these one points, don't we? Just really on the rank business, I'd like possibly we could come back to this with some information. It's not going to be straight away, within a few months or so when we know what's happening. Because it's been here tonight, what I don't want it to do is get left behind, and it's just left to the trade, and they feel as if they're not being listened to and things like that. So I'd like an update anyway.
By way of response to that, as we've already talked about, the top of the town has been out for consultation. The regeneration plans are there. I think it will become a new hub. If it all goes to plan, it will become a really exciting new hub for this town, and we're going to need taxis up there to deal with that. So automatically, rank provision up there will be a huge consideration to get these guys more work, to get our people out of the town, as Councillor Fella said, to make it safe for people to move around the town at night. Likewise, with the John Lewis and the Network Rail and the regeneration of Basing View, rank provision will have to be considered as all of that, and we're going to need to engage the Federation on that. So it's a little bit too early for us to come back to you soon with rank provision and a reassessment, because it's happening as we speak and will be forming part of the whole new regeneration plans. So I think the most important thing for us as a team is to engage these guys about how they think it's going to look with the two-way traffic and with the John Lewis store and the access and egress, how the road system's going to work, and really consider the best place that they think they can pick their passengers up and take them from. And I think that's the crux of it, is getting those chaps engaged about where they think is the best place for the Manx to sit. And I think we'll have a whole new looking town in a couple of years, and we've got to make sure that we make provision for customers and the travelling public in that regeneration.
Thank you very much. I think you agree one of the main benefits of these meetings is that we do get a chance, and officers do, we all get a chance to hear what it's like for the trades and hear your grievances. It's a chance to air them, and hopefully something will come out of that, specifically with regard to where you advertise, where the ranks are, use of them, etc., etc. As far as the issue in question is concerned, which is the limiting question, I think what I'm hearing from the committee is that we can perhaps just say that the concerns and comments of the trade on that issue have been heard, noted and appreciated, and it will be kept under close review. We do want to return to it in due course, especially when new legislation comes in. Is that reasonable? Yes? Does everyone agree? Just a moment, yes?
Would it be okay to add into that resolution what's in the recommendation, which is that there will be no change to the current council policy in relation to numbers?
Yes, that's implicit in what we said, but yes, do say that. Thank you. Okay, I think we've finished with that subject now. So we'll just go on to the final, thank you gentlemen for coming, to the final item, which is to note the outcome of one subcommittee that we've had since the last meeting regarding the licence of the Bombay Spirits Company. You've got the notes at the back of the order paper. The licence was granted with the conditions that are listed. Okay, thank you very much. Oh yes, here come your notes regarding Scrap Metal Dealers Act of 2013, and we will presumably be having another overall training session before too long, which I hope we can all get to. Yes?
I would just like to ask, last year when we arranged the training for members, to keep the costs down, we did an afternoon session and an evening session to accommodate those members that are unavailable during the day. Are we happy to go down that route again this year? Because it means that we can get the same trainer in to do both sessions. Obviously, I'll look at what other committees are on that week, so we don't have any clashes. But we need to allow about 4 hours, which is why I quite like to start at 6:30, but I know it's a bit tight for some of you. So are you all happy that we do the same thing this year, and it's 6:30 till 10ish for the evening and 1:30 to 5ish for the afternoon? Is that okay? Okay, well I'll get that underway and I'll let you know the dates as soon as possible. But if there's any definite days of the week to avoid specifically, let me know. I know.
This week compulsory.
Yeah, once the committees have been set up, then we'll know who's sitting on each committee, and then we'll send out that, and it will be compulsory, particularly under the Licensing Act. The other stuff's not quite so compulsory, but now we're starting to get new legislation, such as the scrap metal dealers, and that it's really important that you're fully aware of what you as members can and can't do, and we will be very happy to provide that training. So I'll get that sorted then, and I'll do the same as last year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Meeting over.